create and manage private clouds as well as hybrid clouds that consist of private, public, or hosted clouds. System Center 2012 R2 includes several components, and the component that we use for taking our on-premises data center and creating private clouds around it is the Virtual Machine Manager component that's included with System Center 2012 R2. Virtual Machine Manager allows us to create one or more private clouds using the Create Cloud button. Those private clouds are used to pool together our virtualization hosts that could be running Hyper-V, VMware vSphere, or Citrix Xen Server, our logical networks, our storage. All of that can be pooled together into one or more private clouds, where we then have capacity limits that are set on each of those private clouds, effectively having each private cloud be a virtualized representation of our data center across these various resources. Once we have those private clouds set up, we can then assign access to those private clouds, so that if we had development teams or business unit IT teams that were interested in having direct access to be able to provision resources on these delegated private clouds, we could assign them access through a user role, scope that down to just the clouds within our private network, our private data center that we wish them to have access to, further restrict quotas, and even go down as far as restricting actions of what they can do on those private clouds, so that as a developer, perhaps they can only provision a new virtual machine from in a permitted template that we've already preset up for them, and then once those virtual machines are provisioned, have very limited management control based on their needs as a developer around those virtual machines. So System Center 2012 R2 Virtual Machine Manager allows us to build those private clouds, and then for monitoring our clouds we have System Center Operations Manager. System Center Operations Manager has a specific management pack for Windows Azure, as well as a management pack for Hyper-V virtualization hosts. What that allows us to do is have a consistent view both at a fabric level for our virtualization fabric, as well as having the ability to have System Center Operations Manager leverage agents within each of the virtual machines that it can query and use to track at an application workload and operating system level very granular statistics on the operation of those virtual machines. So we can look at the fabric and we can look inside the virtual machines to get a total 360-degree view of our hybrid clouds and the workloads that are running on top of them. From a management perspective, when we start moving into that hybrid cloud space, System Center 2012 R2 also includes App Controller as an additional component. App Controller allows us to integrate our on-premises private clouds. Again, those would be private clouds that Virtual Machine Manager built using Hyper-V, VMware, or Citrix Xen Server virtualization hosts as resource pools. It can integrate those on-premises private clouds with our public cloud Windows Azure infrastructure or our hosting providers, our service providers' hosted clouds. It allows us to have App Controller as a single consistent web-based interface for allowing the management of virtual machines across our hybrid clouds, effectively extending our data center to include not just the virtual machines that are running within our data center, but having a consistent interface for managing those virtual machines that are also running on Windows Azure or within hosted cloud environments. So why don't we drop over into our lab again and take a look at System Center 2012 R2 App Controller and how it can allow us to manage hybrid cloud infrastructure. Okay, so here we are in our lab and we're looking at System Center 2012 R2 App Controller. You'll see on its overview page that we've got the ability to connect to private clouds, one or more, through our virtual machine manager server connections, public clouds, as well as hosted clouds through a service provider connection. And I've currently got one virtual machine manager server added, as well as one Windows Azure subscription added in. And what this allows us to do is to begin thinking about our virtual machines regardless, in a consistent manner, regardless of which cloud they're part of. When I go over to virtual machines, for instance, I see a list of all of my virtual machines across all of my clouds. I have consistent ways of interacting with those virtual machines for performing basic management. And when I go to deploy a new virtual machine, I have one web-based interface for being able to deploy across all of my clouds, whether they're private clouds, whether they're public clouds, whether they're hosted clouds, and step through the process of being able to configure with a consistent tool and a consistent approach virtual machines across any of those clouds. In addition, in App Controller on my library page, I also have the ability to plug in on-premises shared folders, my storage locations that are part of my public cloud or hosted cloud. So when it comes time to actually move virtual machines from a public cloud location to a private cloud location or vice versa, with App Controller, that process of moving virtual hard disks and virtual machines back and forth between clouds becomes as simple as a select and copy-paste operation, where I can select one or more virtual hard disks that I wish to copy down to my on-premises private cloud, select copy, move over to one of my on-premises shared locations, right-click, paste, and have App Controller manage the entire end-to-end process of copying that data from public cloud to private cloud to public cloud, or to a hosted cloud location, all from within App Controller in System Center 2012 R2. So what we've just looked at is the management side of being able to properly manage a hybrid cloud that consists of private, public, and hosted cloud resources from a consistent management tooling for provisioning, for managing, for monitoring, for automating, and for protecting, without having to use separate tools and managing each of those cloud locations as separate discrete sets of virtual machines and application workloads. So for continuing forward in the planning process for your hybrid cloud, there's some great resources that we have available to help you plan and build your private and hybrid cloud. We've got a couple free ebooks that are great resources for helping you to get started. There's an Introducing Windows Server 2012 R2 ebook that provides a great technical overview across all of the private cloud foundation features of Server 2012 R2. And there's also another free ebook on hybrid cloud management with System Center 2012 that dives deeper into using App Controller and VMM together as part of your private cloud and hybrid cloud management strategy. And then finally, out at our Build Your Cloud page, we've got a whole series of additional material that allows you to go deeper on planning and building your hybrid and private cloud environment. You can get to that out at the slide. Some of those resources that you'll find helpful out at that Build Your Cloud page are reference architecture guides that our Building Clouds team or our other data center or product teams have put together. The reference architecture guides are great because whether you're a small, medium, or large organization, it allows you to quickly form a standard reference architecture that's helpful for standardizing the deployment and configuration of a private cloud environment, and then attaching that on to a hybrid cloud through public cloud providers like Windows Azure. So there's a few reference architecture guides in particular that you'll find helpful. There's an infrastructure as a service fabric architecture guide for helping to plan the initial provisioning of that private cloud environment. There's an infrastructure as a service fabric management guide for helping to plan out how you're going to manage your private cloud fabric. And then there's also a hybrid cloud infrastructure design considerations guide that steps through in more detail the planning and design considerations of taking that private cloud and extending it to a hybrid cloud by leveraging public and hosted cloud resources. Certainly beyond these great resources, there's also additional resources that are available to you through our TechNet Evaluation Center, where you can download free evaluation versions of our private cloud foundation and management software. You can also sign up for a free trial of Windows Azure so that you can experience Windows Azure directly from a hands-on perspective. In addition, we have TechNet Virtual Labs that allow you to jump in to the middle of a pre-made lab environment virtually without having to spend the time in building your lab environment. So if you want to get more hands-on with just a particular component or aspect of Windows Server 2012 R2, System Center 2012 R2, or Windows Azure, the virtual labs are a great way to be able to do that very quickly and easily. And then feel free to come back for the other modules that are part of this particular series on the Microsoft Virtual Academy, as well as our other series. We've got some great content on Windows Azure, on Windows Server 2012 R2, on System Center 2012 R2, on building private clouds and hybrid clouds that you'll find really useful. So be sure to browse through the other courses that are available on Microsoft Virtual Academy as well. Thanks so much for attending this session today, and certainly feel free to contact me down the road. I hope you find the additional resources that we've made available useful as you continue through your planning process in planning your hybrid cloud. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.